For 5 cruel years, I worked shifts as a night watchman, sending $300 every month like clockwork to my brother-in-law to pay off a private loan my late wife took for treatments before she died from a sudden illness. I was 60 years old, exhausted, and living on instant noodles so that I could save and send all the money on time. Then one day, a neighbor handed me a security camera footage to check. What I saw there removed the earth beneath. Before I tell you what was in that footage, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe for more stories like this. My name is Arthur. I'm 60 years old. 5 years ago, my world ended when my wife, Linda, died of a sudden illness while visiting her family upstate. Her brother told me she had racked up massive private medical debts trying to save herself, and if I didn't pay them, they would lose their family home. I loved her, so I postponed my retirement. I took a grueling job working nights at a warehouse. Every month, like clockwork, I sent the check. I was tired, my back ached, but I slept peacefully knowing I was doing the right thing. Then one day, an old friend of mine, who was also my brother-in-law's neighbor, whispered to me at the grocery store, "Arthur, stop sending the checks and watch the camera feed. Linda might still be around." The grocery bag in my hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I stood there in the frozen food aisle, staring at Mrs. Higgins. She was a kind woman, not the type to gossip maliciously. Her hands were shaking a little as she handed me a slip of paper. "It's an IP address," she whispered, looking over her shoulder as if she expected the Grim Reaper himself to walk down the cereal aisle. My son set up security cameras for Gary's neighborhood watch. He gave me access to check on my cats when I'm away. But the camera angles, they cover Gary's back porch too. "Arthur, please, just look." She hurried away before I could ask her to repeat herself. I walked to my car in a daze. My heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Linda might still be around. The words didn't make sense. I had buried her. I had paid for the casket. I had wept until my tear ducts were dry. I drove home, my old sedan rattling as I pushed it over the speed limit. My house was dark and cold. It had been that way for 5 years. I didn't heat the whole place anymore, just the bedroom and the kitchen. Gas was expensive, and Gary needed that $300. I sat down at my dusty computer. It took 10 minutes to boot up. My hands trembled so badly, I mistyped the IP address 3 times. Finally, the feed loaded. It was a live stream of a backyard. I recognized the peeling white paint of Gary's fence. There was a barbecue grill, a few rusted chairs, and a sliding glass door. Nothing happened for 20 minutes. I sat there feeling foolish. Mrs. Higgins was old. Maybe she was seeing things. Maybe grief had finally cracked her mind, just like it had cracked my heart. I was about to close the browser when the sliding door opened. A woman stepped out. She was wearing a bright yellow sundress, a dress I had bought for Linda on our 10th anniversary. She held a glass of white wine in one hand and a cigarette in the other. She threw her head back and laughed at something inside. The house? I stopped breathing. It wasn't a ghost. Ghosts don't smoke menthols. Ghosts don't have that specific way of tilting their hip when they lean against a railing. It was Linda, my dead wife. But she looked different. Younger somehow. Her hair was dyed a fierce red, not the soft brown I remembered. And she looked healthy, vibrant. Not the sickly, frail woman Gary had described in those final phone calls 5 years ago. Then a man walked out. He wasn't Gary. He was young, maybe 25. He was shirtless, displaying a chest full of tattoos, and he wrapped his arms around her waist from behind. Linda leaned into him, nuzzling his neck. I watched them. I watched the woman I had mourned every single day for 1,825 days. I watched the woman whose medical debts had forced me to sell my boat, downgrade my car, and work 12-hour shifts guarding a dump warehouse at 60 years old. I watched her kiss another man. I didn't scream. I didn't smash the computer. A strange, cold calm washed over me. It was the calm of a man who realizes he has nothing left to lose. I took my phone out and started recording the screen. I recorded for an hour. I watched them drink my money. I watched them eat steaks that my night shifts paid for. When the sun went down and they went back inside, I finally closed the laptop. I walked to the kitchen and made myself a cup of instant noodles, the cheap kind, 5 for $1. I ate them slowly, staring at the wall. The sadness was gone. The grief that had weighed down my shoulders for half a decade evaporated, replaced by something heavier, something sharper. Revenge, but I knew I couldn't just storm over there. If I confronted them now, they would run, they would disappear again, and I would never get justice. Gary was slippery. If he could fake a death, he could fake a disappearance. No, I needed a plan. I needed to understand exactly how they did it, and then I needed to destroy them. Not physically. That was too easy. I wanted to take everything from them piece by piece, just as they had taken my life from me. The next morning, I called in sick to the warehouse. It was the first time in 5 years. My boss, a gruff man named Miller, sounded worried. "You okay, Artie? You never miss a shift." "Just a stomach bug," I lied. "I'll be back tomorrow." I spent the day digging. I started with the death. 5 years ago, Linda had gone to stay with Gary in Ohio because she needed specialists for her condition. She had been vague about the illness, chronic fatigue, autoimmune issues. I wanted to go with her, but she insisted I stay and keep working to maintain our insurance. Then came the call. Gary, sobbing on the phone. "She's gone, Arthur. An aneurysm. It was instant." I remembered driving up there in a fugue state. Gary met me at the funeral home. He told me that because of the aneurysm and the autopsy, the body was in bad shape. He suggested a closed casket. He said he wanted me to remember her as she was. I had thanked him. I had actually thanked him for sparing me the pain. Now, sitting at my kitchen table surrounded by old bank statements, I realized how perfectly they had played me. I looked at the funeral home invoice I had paid. St. Jude's Mortuary. I looked up the number. It was disconnected. I searched the address on Google Maps. It was a strip mall. There was no funeral home there. Just a laundromat and a vape shop. I felt sick. The casket. I had paid $3,000 for a casket. What was in it? Rocks? Sand? Or was it just empty? Lowered into a grave I had visited twice a year. I needed to know if she was legally dead. If she was committing massive fraud. If she wasn't, Gary was committing fraud by taking my money for medical debts. I drove to the county clerk's office. I told them I lost my copy of the death certificate and needed a new one. The clerk, a bored-looking woman with heavy eyeliner, typed Linda's name and social security number into the database. She frowned. She typed it again. "Sir," she said, looking over her glasses, "are you sure about the date?" "Yes," I said. 5 years ago, May 12th. "I have no record of a Linda Miller passing away in this state, or the neighboring counties in the last 10 years, she said, my hands clenched on the counter. "Check again, please." She did. "Nothing, sir. According to the system, Linda Miller is alive and well. Her social security number is actually currently active on a credit card application filed last month." The room spun. She wasn't dead. She wasn't even pretending to be dead legally. They had just told me she was dead. They relied on the fact that I trusted them. They relied on the fact that I wouldn't check. They knew I was a simple man who loved his wife and trusted her family. They hadn't faked a death certificate. They had just bought a cheap coffin, held a fake service in a rented room, and buried an empty box. I walked out of the clerk's office into the bright sunlight. I felt like laughing. It was so absurd. It was so cruel. I drove to the bank next. I needed to see where my checks were going. I had been writing them to Gary, assuming he was paying the private loan shark he claimed held Linda's debt. I spoke to a manager. "I'm reviewing my finances," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I send checks to this account number. Can you tell me if it's a business account? For a loan company?" The manager tapped on his keyboard. "I can't give you the account holder's name for privacy reasons, sir, but I can tell you it is a personal checking account." "Jointly held?" "Jointly?" "Yes. 2 signers, Gary and Linda. They were sharing the account. I was funding their joint account. I went home and sat in the dark. I looked at the photos on my mantelpiece. Me and Linda at our wedding. Me and Linda at the beach. She looked so innocent. I looked at the stack of unpaid bills on my counter. My electricity was overdue. I had been skipping meals to send that $300. I had holes in my work boots because I couldn't afford new ones. And she was buying wine. She was applying for credit cards. She was sleeping with a tattooed boy, half my age. I needed to see them up close. The video feed wasn't enough. I needed to smell their betrayal. I packed a bag. I put a tire iron in the trunk, not to use it, but because it made me feel safer. I drove through the night, 4 hours north to Gary's town. I parked 3 streets away from Gary's house. I put on my black hoodie and my work cap. I was a night watchman. Walking around in the dark was what I did best. I knew how to move silently. I knew how to stick to the shadows. I crept through the neighbor's yard. Mrs. Higgins' yard. I saw the camera she had told me about. I gave a little nod to it, knowing she might be watching. I crouched behind the hedges bordering Gary's fence. The lights were on in the house. The windows were open. I could hear them. "We need more beer, babe," a male voice said. That must be the boy. "Get a job and buy it yourself, Leo," Linda's voice replied. It was sharp, nasty, not the sweet voice I remembered. "Come on, Lynn. You know Gary is tight with the cash until the old man pays up at the end of the month." My blood ran cold. The old man, that was me. "Gary is an idiot," Linda snapped. "He lost $500 on the horses last week. If Arthur stops paying, we're screwed." "He won't stop," Gary's voice chimed in. He sounded drunk. "Arthur is a golden retriever, loyal and stupid. He'll pay until he drops dead." Which, judging by how he looked at the funeral, might be soon. They all laughed. Linda laughed the hardest. "He looked like a wet dog in that cheap suit," Linda cackled. "God, I was so bored, Gary. Thank God you got me out. Living with him was like watching paint dry. Let's save for retirement, Linda. Let's play Scrabble, Linda." "Ugh. Well, you got your excitement now." Leo laughed. "And you got me." Yeah, she dismissed him. "Just pour me another drink, and Gary, check the account. Did the transfer clear? I want to go shopping tomorrow." I sat in the bushes, listening to them mock my love, my sacrifice, my life. I realized then that Linda hadn't just left me. She despised me. She hated my stability, my kindness. She wanted excitement. She wanted drama. Well, I thought, gripping the dirt in my hands, I'm going to give you more drama than you can handle. I drove back home in silence. The rage had settled into a cold, hard block of ice in my chest. I didn't stop the payment that month. I sent the check for $300. I added a little note. "Found some extra cash. Love you all." I wanted them to be comfortable. I wanted them unsuspecting. I returned to work at the warehouse. Miller, my boss, asked if I was okay. I looked him in the eye and said, "I've never been better, boss. I have a project." I started gathering evidence. I hired a private investigator, a cheap one I found online, but he was hungry. I told him I suspected my brother-in-law of insurance fraud. I didn't tell him about Linda yet. I wanted him to focus on Gary. The PI, a guy named Sal, came back with a folder a week later. "Your brother-in-law is a mess," Sal said, chewing on a toothpick. "He's got gambling debts all over town. He owes money to some bad people. And he's got a roommate, a woman, goes by the name Cindy, but she matches the description of your late wife." "I know," I said. Sal raised an eyebrow. "You know? Then why are you paying him?" "Because I'm fattening the pig before the slaughter," I said. Sal grinned. "I like your style, old man." We dug deeper. We found out that the house Gary lived in, the family home I was supposedly saving, was actually in foreclosure. They hadn't paid the mortgage in 6 months. They were blowing my money on booze, gambling, and Leo's motorcycle payments. We found out that Linda, Cindy, had been arrested twice for shoplifting in the next town over. She was reckless. I had enough to send them to jail for fraud. But jail wasn't enough. I wanted them to feel the panic I had felt. I wanted them to feel the poverty I had lived in. I initiated phase 1 of my plan, the drought. It was the first of the month, the day I usually sent the check. I didn't send it. I waited. 2 days passed. Then my phone rang. It was Gary. "Hey, Arthur," he sounded overly cheerful. "How are you, buddy?" "I'm fine, Gary," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Just tired." Yeah, hard work. Listen, the check didn't arrive yet. Just wanted to make sure it didn't get lost in the mail." "Oh," I said, pausing for effect. "I didn't send it." Silence. "What? Why?" "I lost my job, Gary," I lied. "The warehouse cut staff. I have no income." "What do you mean you have no income?" Gary's voice rose an octave. "Arthur, you have to pay the debt. The loan sharks. They'll come for the house. They'll hurt me." "I'm sorry, Gary. I have $12 in my account. I can't help you. You have savings. You have your 401k. I cashed that out years ago, Gary. Remember? To pay for Linda's treatments." He was hyperventilating. "Arthur, you have to find the money. Sell your car. Sell your house." "I can't, Gary. I'm sorry." I hung up. I watched the camera feed. It was chaos. Gary was pacing the backyard, screaming into his phone. Linda came out, looking disheveled. "He's not paying?" she shrieked. "What do you mean he's not paying?" "He lost his job," Gary yelled. "We have nothing, Linda. The bookie is coming for his money on Friday." "Make him pay?" Linda threw a glass against the fence. Tell him the loan sharks are threatening to dig up my body. Tell him anything. I tried. He's broke. Leo walked out, scratching his stomach. So no money? Does that mean no beer? Linda slapped him. Shut up, you idiot. We're going to lose the house. I watched them turn on each other. It was beautiful. Without my money acting as the glue, their toxic little family fell apart instantly. Linda screamed at Gary for gambling. Gary screamed at Linda for her spending. Leo just sat there, looking bored, realizing his sugar mama was tapped out. But I wasn't done. Phase 2 was the main carrot. I waited 3 days. They were desperate. I could see the dark circles under Gary's eyes on the camera feed. I called Gary back. Gary, I said, sounding weak, I have news. Did you get a job? He asked immediately. No, I went to the doctor. All this stress. My heart. They say it's bad, Gary. Very bad. I might not have much time. Oh, Gary said. His tone changed instantly. Oh, Arthur, I'm so sorry. I've been thinking, I continued. I don't have anyone left. Just you. You were Linda's brother. You're the only family I have. We are family, Arthur, Gary cooed. I have a life insurance policy, I lied. A big one. $500,000. And my house. It's paid off. It's worth another $300,000. I heard Gary's breath hitch. That's a lot, Arthur. I want to update my will, I said. I want to leave it all to you. But I need to see you. I need to make sure you'll use it to pay off Linda's debts and keep her memory alive. Of course. Of course, Arthur. I'll come down there right now. No, I rasped, injecting a pathetic tremor into my voice that I didn't truly feel. I'm too sick to host anyone here, Gary. The place is a mess, and I can barely stand. I want to come to you. I need to see the family home one last time before the end. I'll drive up this weekend. We can sign the papers there. Gary didn't even pretend to hesitate or worry about my condition. Yes, absolutely. Come up. We'll make a nice dinner. It'll be just like old times. Okay, see you Saturday, Gary. I hung up the phone and immediately turned to my laptop, my eyes glued to the screen. The grainy feed flickered to life, and what I saw made my stomach turn with disgust. Gary was dancing. The man who had just expressed deep concern for my dying heart was literally jigging in the yard, kicking up dust in a grotesque celebration. He grabbed Linda, spinning her around in a wild, jubilant circle. We're rich, he shouted, his voice cracking with euphoria. The old fool is dying. He's leaving us everything. 800 grand, Linda. We're set for life. Linda clapped her hands, her face twisted in a triumphant sneer. Finally, I told you he was useful for something other than paying bills. We have to clean up, Gary said, pacing frantically now, his mind already spending the money. He's coming here Saturday. You have to hide. You and Leo need to go to a motel until he's gone. No way, Linda snapped, crossing her arms defiantly. I'm not staying in a cheap motel while you play the grieving brother. I want to be close. What if he changes his mind? I want to watch. He can't see you, Linda. He thinks you're dead. I'll stay in the basement, she insisted, eyes narrowing. Or I'll wear a wig. I don't care. But I'm not leaving my house when $500,000 is walking through the door. I watched them, a cold smile touching my lips. Perfect. They were greedy. Their greed was the lock, and I had the key. Saturday arrived. I dressed in my best suit, the one I wore to the funeral. It was a bit loose now. I had lost weight from the stress and the bad food. It made me look frailer, which was perfect for the role. I drove the 4 hours. I stopped at a hardware store on the way. I bought a few things. Not weapons, just tools. A heavy-duty padlock, a few hidden cameras of my own, and a projector. I arrived at Gary's house at exactly 6 p.m. The suburban lawn was manicured, but I knew the rot festering behind the siding. Gary threw the door open, wearing a dress shirt that strained against his gut, a desperate costume of respectability. Arthur, look at you! Come in, come in! He pulled me into a hug that reeked of cheap musk and nervous sweat. Gary! I wheezed, forcing a dry, rattling cough. Good to see you. I hobbled into the foyer, dragging my leg. The house was sterile. Suspiciously so. They had scrubbed away every trace of Leo's, trash, and Linda's existence. Please sit, Gary said, guiding me to the table like I was made of glass. I made a roast. I sat heavily. Is there anyone else here? No, just me, Gary lied without blinking. Living the bachelor life since the tragedy. It must be lonely, I murmured, watching him carefully. It is, Arthur. But knowing you're helping, it means the world. We ate in tension. The meat was like sawdust, but I forced it down. Finally, Gary pushed his plate away, greed flickering in his eyes. So, about the will? Should we look at the papers? Yes, I said, inflecting my tone with the pathetic desperation of a lonely widower clinging to the past. But first, I want to show you something. I brought a presentation, a memorial video I made for Linda. I want us to watch it together, to honor her before I sign everything over to you. Gary looked impatient, his eyes darting toward the briefcase where he thought the signed will was. Kept, but he forced a stiff, polite nod. That sounds lovely, Arthur. I stood up, moving with a deliberate slowness that mimicked the arthritis I didn't actually have, and set up the portable projector on the dining table. I aligned the lens carefully until it pointed squarely at the blank white wall opposite us, creating a perfect canvas for the truth. The machine hummed to life, casting a stark, rectangular blue light that illuminated the dust motes dancing in the stagnant air of the house. I connected my laptop, my hands steady now, the tremor I'd faked earlier completely gone. I need to use the restroom first, I said, straightening up and clutching my stomach as if the grief was physically painful. Down the hall. First door on the left, Gary said, barely glancing at me, his eyes fixed on the blank blue screen, probably counting the millions he thought he was about to inherit. I walked down the hall, the floorboards groaning under my heavy work boots. I didn't turn left. I knew exactly where I was going. I had studied the floor plan of this subdivision online for 3 nights straight. I knew the layout better than I knew my own empty house. I also knew where they were hiding. As I passed the basement door, which was slightly ajar, the scent hit me, the acrid, undeniable stench of cheap menthol cigarettes wafting up from the darkness below. It was the same brand Linda used to smoke on the porch when she thought I was asleep. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the heavy-duty padlock I'd bought at the hardware store 3 towns over. It was cold and heavy in my hand, a solid weight of justice. I quietly slipped the steel shackle through the old-fashioned metal hasp on the doorframe. With a deep breath, I squeezed it shut. Click. The sound was soft, barely audible over the hum of the projector, but to me, it sounded like a judge's gavel coming down. Linda and Leo were now trapped in the basement, sealed in with their own smoke and secrets. I walked back to the dining room, smoothing my jacket, my heart beating with the rhythm of vengeance. Ready? Gary asked, a fake plastic smile plastered on his face, trying to mask his boredom. Ready, I said, my voice dropping an octave, losing the wheeze entirely. I hit the spacebar. The video started. It wasn't a montage of Linda and me on our honeymoon. It wasn't a slideshow of her smiling in the garden set to sentimental piano music. It was the live recorded footage from the backyard. Gary's smile froze, turning into a rictus of confusion. On the wall, projected giant-sized in high definition, was the video of Linda and Leo making out on the patio furniture I had paid for. The audio was crisp, amplified by the Bluetooth speaker I had hidden behind the centerpiece. It filled the room with the sound of their laughter, a cruel, mocking sound that bounced off the walls. Arthur is a golden retriever, loyal and stupid. Gary's recorded voice boomed through the speakers, echoing in the silence of the dining room. The color drained from Gary's face instantly, leaving him a pale shade of gray. He stood up so fast he knocked his chair over, the wood clattering loudly against the floor. Arthur, what is this? This is a deepfake. This is AI. Someone is trying to frame me. Sit down, Gary, I said. My voice wasn't wheezy anymore. It was hard, strong. It was the voice of a man who had worked security for 40 years, a man who knew how to handle trespassers. Arthur, I swear, I said sit down. I slammed my hand on the table, the plates rattling ominously. Gary collapsed back into his chair, looking small and defeated. Arthur, please, I can explain. Can you? I asked, leaning over the table, my shadow casting long over him. Can you explain why my dead wife is drinking wine in your backyard? Can you explain why you faked her death and let me mourn an empty box for 5 years? She was in trouble, Gary stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. Gambling debts. Bad people were after her. We had to make her disappear. We did it to protect her. We didn't want you to get hurt. And the money I sent, was that to protect her too? We needed to live. It's expensive to hide someone from the mob. And the boy? Leo? Is he her bodyguard? I gestured to the frozen image on the wall, where Leo's hand was clearly up Linda's shirt. Gary put his head in his hands, unable to look at the evidence. Suddenly there was a frantic pounding from the hallway, heavy fists banging against the basement door. Gary, let us out. It smells like smoke down here. The ventilation is blocked. It was Linda's voice, shrill and terrified. I smiled, a cold, humorless expression. Ah, the grieving sister-in-law speaks. Arthur, let them out, Gary pleaded, his eyes wide with genuine fear now. Please don't hurt them. I didn't start a fire, Gary, I said calmly. I just dropped a theatrical smoke pellet into the intake vent in the hallway while I was locking the door. Harmless, but terrified people don't think rationally. I walked to the hallway, listening to the screams intensify. I fished the key from my pocket and unlocked the padlock. The door flew open instantly. Linda and Leo stumbled out, coughing and waving their hands, eyes streaming from the gray haze. Linda looked up, gasping for air, and locked eyes with me. She froze. She was wearing stained gray sweatpants and a dirty tank top, her dyed red hair a mess. She looked nothing like the angel I remembered. She looked like a trapped rat exposed to the light. Arthur, she whispered, the color draining from her face. Hello, Linda, I said, looking her up and down with zero affection. You look good for a ghost. The three of them stood in the living room. Gary was shaking. Leo looked ready to bolt. Linda just stared at me, her eyes darting around, calculating. Arthur, Linda started, putting on a soft voice. She took a step toward me. Baby, please, let me explain. I was scared. I wanted to come back to you, but I couldn't. I was protecting you. Stop, I said. Just stop. I heard you, Linda. I heard you call me a bored old man. I heard you laugh about my cheap suit at your funeral. Her face hardened. The mask dropped. Fine. So you know. What are you going to do? End us? No, I said. I'm not a monster. I'm a night watchman. I observe. And I report. I pulled a thick envelope from my jacket pocket. This, I said, tossing it on the table, is a copy of the file I sent to the district attorney this morning. It contains proof of insurance fraud, social security fraud, and theft by deception. Gary gasped. You went to the police? Oh, I didn't stop there, I said. I also sent a copy to the IRS. You haven't paid taxes on that income you've been hiding, and I sent a copy to the bank that holds your mortgage. Arthur, you can't, Linda screamed. I'm your wife. My wife died 5 years ago, I said coldly. You are just a criminal named Linda Miller. We'll go to jail, Leo whined. I didn't do anything, I just got here. You're an accessory, kid, I said. Enjoy life behind bars. I looked at Gary. And that loan shark you mentioned? The one you owe money to? I found out who he is. Big Tony, right? Runs the auto shop on 5th? Gary turned white. How do you know about Tony? I paid him a visit, I said. I showed him the bank statements. I showed him that you did have money coming in every month, but you were spending it on motorcycles and clothes instead of paying him back. He was very interested to know that you've been holding out on him. Gary looked like he was going to vomit. Arthur, Tony will. Finish me. He might, I said. But that's family business, and I'm not family anymore. I turned to leave. Arthur, wait! Linda grabbed my arm. Her grip was strong. You can't leave me here. Look at this place. It's a dump. I have nothing. I looked at her hand on my arm. The hand I used to hold while we watched movies. The hand I held while she pretended to be sick. I pulled my arm away. You have each other, I said, and you have the $300 I sent this month. Make it last. I walked out of the house. I got into my car and locked the doors. As I pulled away, I saw a black SUV pull into the driveway. 2 large men got out. One of them looked like the description of Big Tony. I didn't stay to watch. I didn't need to see the aftermath. I'd seen enough. I drove home. The drive felt shorter this time. The wait was gone. The fallout was swift. Gary was arrested 2 days later for fraud. The police found Linda hiding in the attic. Because she had legally falsified documents to obtain credit cards under a dead identity, she was looking at 10 to 15 years. Leo turned, states evidence against them to save his own skin, admitting to everything. The house was foreclosed on. As for me, I sold my house. I took the money I had been saving. Yes, I had been saving a little, despite the payments. And I moved. I moved to a small town by the coast, a place where nobody knows me. I retired. I bought a small boat, a real one this time. I spend my days fishing. I eat fresh fish, not instant noodles. Sometimes when I'm out on the water, watching the sunset, I think about Linda. I don't feel anger anymore. I don't feel sadness. I feel relief. She wanted excitement. She wanted a life of high stakes and drama. She got it. She's currently the star of the Women's Correctional Facility Drama Club. And me? I wanted peace. And finally, at 65 years old, I have it. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and subscribe. It really inspires us to share more such stories with you. Let me know in the comments, what would you have done if you saw your dead spouse on camera?